Welcome to the fourth installment of No Harm, No Foul, where we've been exploring to what extent American law embraces this principle when it comes to using other people's property. Today I'd like to explore what's the lesson of the way in which American law treats all these cases. As you may recall, we began our exploration by thinking about two hypothetical cases. That time when you're sitting in the library and you use somebody else's wireless network in order to get on the internet without their permission, and you benefit. You get something from them without their permission beforehand. And also we talked a little bit about a case where you're sitting at a baseball stadium and you decide to move up to a better seat without paying for that better seat. In both cases, there really isn't any harm. No harm to the person whose wireless network you used. No harm to the baseball stadium who couldn't sell the baseball seat anyway. And we talked a little bit about, we wondered, should you have to pay for these benefits? We mentioned that it's not a contract. You didn't agree to pay anything. And it's not a tort. You didn't punch somebody in the face, so to speak, and damage them. But what it might be is this in-between category of unjust enrichment where you have to make restitution. Somehow you're unjustly enriched, and therefore you have to restore the other person's property. We explored what this might mean through two cases. The first one was the case of the Great Onyx Cave, an instance where somebody was using someone else's property even though that person couldn't use their own property. They couldn't get into their own portion of the cave. And so somebody else was using that property and making money off of it. And then we explored another case, an egg washing machine. It wasn't being used, just sitting there in storage, and an egg packing company comes along, takes it out of storage, and uses it without the owner's permission. In each of these cases, what we noted was these are cases of unjust enrichment. People are using other people's property, whether it's their cave or whether it's their egg washing machine. And in both instances, courts said, you can't just say, oh, there's been no damage, therefore you don't have to pay anything. No. What happens in each of these cases is you have to pay out the profits that you earned by using somebody else's property without their permission. So you have to pay out some of the profits you earned, the admissions you got from having people come and look at the cave. And you have to pay the $10 a week that it would have cost you to hire somebody to wash the eggs. You have to pay that out to the owner of the egg washer. And the question is why? What is the value at the center of this principle of American law? Why does American law choose to say, you know what, it doesn't matter if there isn't really any damage, we're still going to make you pay out the profit? What I'd like to suggest to you is that at the center of all of our discussion is the principle of control. American law says we need to make sure that property owners can control their property. That people can't just come along and say, I'm going to use your property without permission. So, in the case of the cave, we don't want Edwards to be able to say, I'm going to take Lee's portion of the cave. He's not losing anything when I use it. Therefore, I can do whatever I want. Or the company that wants to use the egg washing machine, they can't just say, you know what, the egg washing machine isn't being used anyway, we're going to use it and we're not going to ask permission. To allow people to do that would be to undermine the control that people exercise over their property, over their, so to speak, caves or their egg washing machines. Now when we say, you know what you have to do when you use somebody else's property? All the profits you earn by using their property, you have to pay them. Now people don't have an incentive to use other people's property. And because there's no incentive to do it, it ensures that property owners are going to maintain control over their property. Nobody's going to come and use it without their permission. If you want to use my property, you're going to ask me. You're going to try and strike some sort of deal with me. Take the egg washing machine. You're going to say to me, how about I pay you $2 a week or $5 a week? Because if you don't make that deal with me up front, all the profits you're going to earn are going to come all back to the owner of the egg washing machine. If you make a deal, well, maybe you can pay $2 or $5 a week and then save yourself $10 a week. But if you don't make that deal beforehand, if you don't get permission, it's not going to be worth it to you. And therefore, American law has incentivized you to ask permission beforehand and not just use other people's property without asking them first. What does this all do? It ensures property owners have control over their property. And so, if we think all the way back to those first two cases, when you're thinking about using that internet connection that you don't own, or that baseball seat that you didn't purchase, well, you're incentivized under American law to ask permission first. If you go and use somebody else's internet connection to make some sort of deal, trade some stock, make lots of money, there's a potential that all those profits you make are going to have to go back to the person whose internet connection you're using. Or, in the case of the baseball stadium, you see that open seat and you go and you decide to take that seat, even though you haven't paid for it. You're going to have to pay out the benefit you received back to the stadium. What does that do? It means you're not going to use that internet connection without permission. You're not going to take that baseball seat without permission. Because everything you gain, you're going to have to pay to the person anyway. And in this way, by ensuring that people have to pay out the profits, not just the damages, not just the harm, that incentivizes people to ask permission first. In the end, American law doesn't focus on whether or not you're damaging another person, whether or not there's harm experienced by the property owner. Instead, what they ask is, are you undermining their control, and how can we incentivize you not to undermine the control of other people's property?